Okay, welcome back, everyone, to the Business Design Podcast. This is the podcast where we try to highlight some interesting aspects of entrepreneurship told from the perspective of a husband and wife couple that are both running a business, but also starting a new business. So good to have you back, Lisi.
I'm here, always.
Our last conversation, we talked a lot about this idea of this march from like 5,000 something in revenue to like 100K in revenue. And I think one of the important points that we pulled out was that actually that number doesn't matter that much. It matters in certain circumstances, depending on what you want to do with your business and what your goals are. So for some of those businesses, that 5 to 100K march may not matter that much. I still want to take the approach to this series of talking about these like revenue milestones, because I think it does, like in our last conversation, draw out the different considerations you should have in that sort of stage of your business and map it to like what you want to build. Because what I'm building and what I've built, it can be very different from a lot of the other entrepreneurs that are out there. There's a completely different way to do it, where some of this advice actually may be a liability to listen to it, right? So I do still want to focus on this idea of like 100K, like to 500K in revenue, but like maybe we'll talk about it more broadly, right? Talk about it about like, let's look at it from different circumstances or perspectives.
I think the number is just number we put on paper to like remind ourselves, right? But what I got was that during different stages of business, it's really your mindset and your focus that makes the difference in the end, right? And I think that mindset, we always talk about the mindset because I do think that it, influences everything we do. So between the 0 to something, you're starting, you pick the right business to get into 5,000 to 100K, your business is like going, it's underway, right? So, but I think last episode we also mentioned that during this stage, most people probably still either doing it as a side hustle or doing that by themselves yet, and then there's not a team, so to speak, because you just don't have enough revenue to pay for somebody and yourself at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So I think to me, this stage from 100K to 500K is really when you start to think about hiring and build a team, right?
Yeah. And, if we're going to get, and maybe we'll make it a little bit more generic in the sense of like general advice that you could maybe want to consider if you're like scaling from that 100 to 500K.
Yeah. Invest in marketing.
Yeah. Well, even getting more nerdy on business stuff, it's like, I think you need to know what your gross margins are. And so you made this face. So like, why would I care about my gross margins? So do you know what gross margin is?
Yes. It's the total sale of your business that also includes the expense and all that stuff.
No. So even getting more specific. So the operating income of your business is your revenue, all your sales, minus what it costs to make those sales, minus your overhead or your expenses. So when I'm talking about gross profit or gross margin calculations, I'm talking about how much do you make producing one widget? Because on the unit level, because remember, when you take revenue minus your cost of goods, that's how much it costs to make that's how much you make from that one widget.
Yeah.
But underneath all of that is marketing, accounting, admin, interest payments. All of those aren't directly related to producing that good.
Understand.
So that's a mistake that a lot of us make, though, is that we don't understand the unit economics of our business. And we try to scale, not understanding the unit economics of our business. And what happens is that you end up scaling in a unprofitable way or a money-losing way.
Right, because if you didn't consider all the marketing, all the other random costs that comes with producing that product or widget, then you think you scale up, multiply the cost of making that, and then suddenly you have no money left to do marketing and to do all the other things underneath, like you said. And then you can really like proceed with this scaled up operation.
So we talked last time about this concept of like, hey, if you're gonna, I think that the advice that we gave was, if you're going to scale up, consider scaling up your business, right? And you're on this march and you're going to make investments, like you got to make sure you have product market fit.
Yeah.
Right. We established that last time. That's usually a good sign when it's like, hey, quit your day job, go get some money. Right. Yeah. And that's actually the hardest part, is to establish product market fit without any money.
Yeah.
That's so hard to do, but it's the first test of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You have to establish that first.
Yeah.
If you can't get past that stage or even establish semi-market, don't go ask someone for money. Yeah. You know?
So like personally speaking, so I think if we're talking about that, then I feel like maybe this year is probably when I should have quit my job.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right. But I did it 2 years ago and spent 2 years kind of figuring all these things out.
But again, talking about like our situations, like we were lucky enough that we had built a business where you could quit your job.
Yes. And we also moved to Utah, where our cost of living is like...
But the benefit of you doing that is that you just accelerated the learning by 2 years instead of taking 4 years.
This is true.
Right? And so like, again, that's another nuance to all of this that we have to like acknowledge for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we quit our job too soon. Sometimes we have to quit our job to establish product. Like, imagine you're building in like an open AI kind of company.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that as a side hustle. Like really that's your life.
Yeah.
You got, that's where you're making, but most of us are not making outside bets to build the next open AI or build the next Amazon or whatever. So, like some of that is not as applicable to the common entrepreneur.
Right.
Going back to what we were saying is like product market fit is important. But also, it's kind of like unit economics fit is equally important in part of product market fit.
Yeah. And by the way, that's something I've never heard talked about, like on social media.
Gross margin.
Like the unit market.
Unit economics,
Unit economics. Maybe I'm just not in the right.
Well, it's a term that you'll hear every VC say, every SaaS growth person say, every product marketing person say. Like it's a buzzword for sure. But again, like you're the common entrepreneur who, just like a lot of these, like in the last episode, we talked about a conference that I went to where I spoke about marketing to like some very new entrepreneurs, but a lot of them have that like, wait, what's gross margin? Right? Like, do you know the unit economics?
Yeah.
So I think when you are in that sort of 100K range, and let's just assume that you're a small business owner, you want to be successful, you want to make money, you want to have freedom. Now you've kind of like proven that someone's willing to give you money for something, right?
Multiple times.
Yeah. Maybe not repeatable yet.
Yeah. But at least you found more than 10 people.
And they haven't quit on you. Like we kept, we fired some of our first clients, but we kept most of them, all of them. And they kept us, right? So like you prove that, okay, we can deliver this. They want to keep us. There's something there.
Right. Yeah. Which is important.
And so now you're like, all right, is there something there? Then now I got to start making moves to like take advantage of this opportunity. And this is where I feel like we really screwed up. And I screwed up as a first-time entrepreneur because I was like, I kind of mistakenly took the revenue and non-churn, or the fact that people were not churning out of our services, as a sign that it was like what we were doing is right and that we should just scale up in our current form. When the reality of it is our current form was good for 5, and the people that I wanted was good for 5 to 100K. So then, but not good for 100 to, well, even past a million to be.
But I guess how would you know that while you're in it? Like we're talking to a lot of entrepreneurs who are going through it. There's really no benefit of hindsight for them to speak up, right? And we mentioned that everybody's endeavor is slightly different, Yeah. So like, how do you know when that is happening or when that's not happening?
I think the first really important thing to consider is, your question is it if you have fit, or if you like when you know what's happening?
The question is, how do you know when you're in the middle of it, you have revenue coming in and realizing your product's not a fit?
It's really hard.
I can imagine.
Because it's really hard because most of the time you are successful with what you're selling. You are getting leads.
That's where you're thinking about scaling up.
Yeah.
To begin with, right?
So two things. One is, can you define your customer now that you've been successful? And if I look back, I was like, I still can't.
Talked about,
I can't define the customer today because we took every kind of customer.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to scale around every kind of customer, I can pretty much guarantee you that every seasoned entrepreneur will tell you like that is a trap that you're going to fall in. That's a trap we fell into.
Yeah. And we have gotten comments from clients saying that we are currently in the trap.
We could do B2B, we could do B2C, we could do pay-per-click, we could do full funnel inbound, we could do podcast. And what ended up happening was like, you need a lot of different kind of people to do those things.
Yeah.
And I was smart enough to not go hire all these people full time, right? I was hired good contractors who were great partners. We knew how to manage them well. But I didn't pay enough attention to the unit economics. I was just trying to get revenue through the door. And in a services business like us, like if you're at a 40 to 60% gross margin, like that's pretty good. And if you drop like 10 to 20% operating income to the bottom line, that's pretty good. Now, when I look back at it, our gross margins were in like the 30s, the high 30%. And that's not a good place to be in as a new company. There's not a lot of, it's almost like a restaurant operating margin in a way.
So what
takes one, yeah.
Now, do you think that's common across most industries? I say most because I know some industry operators super thin margin.
I think it's like anything that's non-technology, non-SaaS, non-recurring revenue, where you build one product and amortize the cost of the product over the lifetime. Any business like that, I think, is generally in our situation. And you're struggling to get good margins.
Got it.
SaaS, the reason why everyone went to SaaS the last like 20 years or 15 years is because you can literally print 80% gross margins. Yeah. And there's a lot of room to work with when it comes to hiring people, kombucha taps, like all that shit that happened. Because not only did you have zero interest rates, but you also had enormous margins in SaaS, and it was very profitable.
Yeah.
For the SaaS companies that figured it out.
Right. I mean, I come from a brand and product background where I think 50 to 60% margin is like the
gross margin. I pay $20 or I pay $100 for a shoe. It cost me $40 to make it. So my gross margin, my gross profit is $60.
Correct. But that's not counting like all the
Skechers, marketing,
commercials,
private jet travel by executives and stuff like that, Yeah. So again, this is a very good point. Like, first of all, don't even think about scaling revenue until you understand the basic financials. You got to understand the unit economics. And most of us get lucky to get to that first 100K and maybe we were profitable. In fact, I was looking at our like historical revenue, and for sure, yeah, I mean, it's a very typical story of a company that like grew revenue really quick, but like we were trying to invest in new things, but ultimately the investing in those new things were not accredited to the core revenue that we were bringing in, and our margins. And again, I kind of did more cash-based accounting. So it's not the typical, like you put investments that you're making on your balance sheet and things like that. But cash flow wise, like, and if you're looking at it more from a cash basis, we were not achieving good gross margins. And I should not have even thought about making investments in other areas until we got those gross margins.
So what made you think that you need to go invest in these other areas? What was a driving force?
First of all, I'm like ADD as hell. So like, I want to do something new, and that's a trap as well. And that's why I think as an entrepreneur, it's always good to have a good operator. And in fact, I feel like the most successful, they always say that you should do it yourself, don't have a partner. But the most successful, I think, businesses that get traction quickly and build a sustainable model are one where you have two co-founders who are very complementary. You got a strategist and you got an operator.
Yeah.
You got a big picture person and you got an in the weeds person.
Yeah. And that's like something they talk about a lot in like startup and VC, right? You should go date your founders first. When you find your right founders, then you can start thinking about going the business. Because from our experience, like when you are, two people going down a path and end up not synergizing, then it's way more headache.
It's destructive. It's not headache. It's very destructive. And I actually think this is a really important time to point out that if you're going to bring on a business partner, they should have some level of business literacy.
Correct. It can't just be they can do the job. I see it in Andrew almost like all the time, the desire and the hope to have someone to bounce off ideas. And then the person will give him constructive feedback, not just like, oh, this looks great, but like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, focus on this, right? I see it in him that he wished he had someone like that to tell him that.
Yeah.
But, you kind of figure it out of the way, and here you are.
And I'll give you the best example, and it's actually very practical. So when you're at different levels of business literacy or knowledge or experience, and so I had a partner, and we were working together, and we were in a bad part of the relationship, right? It was bad. Like we could tell we weren't like communicating with each other. You always know when things are tense.
Yeah.
And I remember I made this statement, like, because I was focused on revenue. I was focused on I wasn't trying to build a unicorn. I was trying to make sure that we could make some cash flow so that we could pay ourselves as entrepreneurs. And I remember my business partner at the time saying, well, Elon, and I love Elon, and we both loved Elon, and we all, I know he's a controversial guy, but I feel like he's very binary sometimes in the way that he makes his decisions, and that's actually very simple.
Yeah,
and
which is good in business a lot of times.
And, you got to be able to navigate the gray area, but you need to be able to call things black and white when they are.
Yeah.
Or make things black and white when they are gray, in fact. But I remember him telling me, and I said this, and he's like, well, he sent me this article. I still remember this, about how Elon sets aside money and time to work on like moonshots and bets. And I fucking exploded in my mind. I was like, you're sending me this fucking bullshit? Like, how illiterate are you when it comes to understanding different businesses?
Right.
Elon has Elon as a brand to raise billions of dollars on a whim to go fund these moonshots, right? I don't have a line of credit. I don't have investors. Like, my partner didn't put any money into the business at the time to fund these,
which is also something that you should consider in a business partner.
Yeah. No, I mean, we can do a whole episode on how to not structure a partnership, an equity partnership in a startup, for sure. Yeah. But in this case, it was just like the level of literacy is like, I have to explain to you that these are balance sheet investments. He has a huge balance sheet. He's got private investors. Right. Like, we're nobody.
Right.
We got to fucking make something that makes money.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to fund the company, then who is, if you want to do these moonshots?
Yeah.
And that just, again, was an example of like, well, you have to have that conversation with a co-founder. Dude, that's a waste of fucking time.
Right.
You're just not on the same page.
Right.
So.
Right. And that, like, snowballs into other things, other decisions.
Yeah, it's like, dude, what do you think? Oh, so this is why you were thinking that. And like, and then immediately in your mind, you're like, dude, your level of understanding of the world is like at this level.
Right.
And like, I'm trying to, like, I know that's where I want to be. I would fucking love to have billions of dollars in my bank account to try and build rockets and this and that,
Right.
But are you ready for the stress that also comes with that?
Right.
Right. So look, I mean, it's very easy to look from the outside and say these things. But again, when you're on that march, you just got to understand, where are you in your risk tolerance, your goals for what you want for the business. You know the kind of person Elon is, right? If he's going to do something, it's going to be to change the world. Do it like, or die trying, basically. Most of us are not like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's be realistic and say like, hey, we need to be able to temper ourselves and just be realistic with what's possible.
Yeah. I mean, step back, just, take one step back. I think that mentality is, the partner saying like comparing your Toby business to Elon's business, for example. I think that is something that I've encountered pretty often in life, actually.
Yeah, because they take the big picture things.
Yeah, and I'm an artist, so there's also working on these things that I myself have gone through it. It's like you make stuff, you put it out there, and you're like wondering why am I not getting anybody, right? And then I look at other artists, doing the artwork itself might not be like a whole lot better or different,
right?
But they do so well. You kind of wonder then you kind of get into a mindset. It's like, oh, if they can do it, then I can definitely do it, right? And I think for the past 20 years, our school education have kind of
a little bit
doubled down on the mindset. Like you can be whoever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and that's I don't know how that is for other countries, but for sure in America, and I've heard this.
I think it's
with some of our international team as well. This has been a little bit of an entitlement, and it's been a theme that's come up.
Yeah, I think it's a global theme, and I think it's a result.
Times have been good,
Exactly. I think it's a result of good times, right? So, going back to the conversation, you kind of wondering about that, and then you never think about I haven't found the market fit, or I haven't found the thing that makes me stand out.
Yeah,
because I think for most people who go into start business, they're going to put out things out there. You're thinking it's pretty good. You put things out that you're at least somewhat proud of, right? And with that emotion also comes to expectations, obviously. So yeah, you kind of you never think about what am I doing is wrong. You always think about what am I not doing. So then immediately for people, it's for me personally, it's I need to spend more time on social media. I need to get more followers. I need to build this and build that. And
maybe you're not targeting the right audience.
Right. And then Andrew always reminds me, what is the plan to do all this? And it's I don't know. I just thought it's something I should do because I want to get to this point.
Yeah,
right?
I think so this whole the 2005 to 2010, 2012 period, the approach to entrepreneurship could be just fucking move fast. Just get it done, move fast, get it out there because...
And iterate.
Because it was actually easy to get traction with very little, right? Back then. There's a lot less content. Search was easy. You could actually grow. I grew a brand organically on social to 100,000 followers back then in 2009 or 10. And there were definitely pages out there with 1 million followers or 1 million likes for sure. But I remember I grew this page to 100K legitimate. There were no bots like there are now back then.
Yeah.
But I just remember I would post something, I'd get 1,200, 1,500 likes on 100K, followers.
Yeah.
I'd get lots of comments.
Yeah.
Right. But today when you launch a company, there's 20x more content, 10x more channels, 50x more entrepreneurs, right?
And 100 other people doing the exact same thing you're doing.
Yeah. So it's just back then, the whole Zuckerberg move fast and break things.
Yeah.
Perfect ethos.
Yeah.
For 2005 to 2010.
Yeah.
But as social starts to increase, content gets more out there, it gets more difficult to get traction. Yeah. You got to build something really, really good now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least understand your customers.
But to do, exactly.
Truly understand who
you got
to target.
Build something good for somebody. Yeah. Very specific.
Yeah. So, it's funny, I just thought, those are the things that people think about in the beginning of business, right? We talk about in the beginning of business. But it also sounds like that is a continual conversation you have at these big milestone points.
I think what's happened is that we're realizing all brands, no matter how good they were at defining their audiences and doing marketing, we've started to realize, crap, I got to get more specific. Crap, I got to segment more. Yeah. Crap, I got to get more specific,
Yeah. I mean, I'm also not love the idea that every company think they need to grow and 10x, right?
I know.
Yeah. I see it in a lot of fashion brands where they started out as a very, Aloe, for example, right? They started as a very specific lifestyle yoga wear, right? It was doing great. We love them. But now, they're starting to get into, apparels. They're starting to get into, other things.
Yeah.
And granted, they're still trying to they're still in the probably the same material, same kind of look and feel. But I'm also wondering, is that still the same customer?
Yeah, that's right. And remember, in the world that we live in now, I actually think you're going to see a lot of micro businesses in a way. And I say micro in comparison to a Fortune 500 company. It's like my business is a micro company compared to
small business, a mom and pop small business, family business.
And the best example is actually this magazine, 000. It's a magazine for Porsche fanatics. It's a print magazine. It comes out 4 times a year. It's beautiful photography, like a feature inside this, very little advertising as well. And a feature inside this magazine is like a 30-page feature, and most of the features are mostly photography. Mm-hmm. And the editor-in-chief, his name is Pete Stout, just car guy, you know what I mean? He started this business, and I can tell it's he's got a great community. He's built a great business. He's met a lot of people through it, I think. I don't think he ever wants to become a gigantic digital media company, which would be the next step for a brand like this, 000. Very niche. It's a $250 subscription a year. It's a 4. I get 4. It's $70 per. So the profile of that customer is a really good customer, right? You are on a subscription product. It's expensive. It's print. It's not digital.
And most people loves it. I see Andrew who looks forward to get this package in the mail.
I collect them. It's a collector's thing for me.
Yeah.
So this guy, Pete, could totally take this business to the next level. Mm-hmm. He could start a YouTube channel. He could do all of these things that you should be doing, quite frankly, if you have amassed that great of an audience around that niche. This is the perfect thing for a business today. Mm-hmm. This is the perfect example of today's business. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't seem like he just wants to get bigger, right? I don't see him trying to push more ads for 000. I don't see him. It spreads through word of mouth. I found about this through Reddit. I found out about it through Instagram. Yeah. I found, Yeah. And so he's just growing organically.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly fine. There's this book out there called Little Giants. It's all about companies that do 9 figures in revenue, but have 20 people working for them.
That's amazing.
That's the dream. I don't want to make a $100 million company with 50,000 employees. That's not that's not what I want to build, right? There's too much headache that comes along with that. And then you become into what you said, the corporation that just has to keep making money for investors and shareholders. So if you can build a business that doesn't require a lot of people, that doesn't require investment, I think that's actually the dream. But again, I'm a very different person than many. There's entrepreneurs out there, they want to build the next billion-dollar company and they want to change the world.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's 0.1% of the world, right?
Yeah. So again, when you're in this, if you're a person like me and you're in this 100K to 500K march, I just would have been a lot smarter about because I looked at our P&L just now and we spent a lot of money in that march. To 500K, and a lot of it was wasted. Yeah. The people are not with us today. They were working on things that were no longer providing. And when I look back on the value that was wasted, it was a couple $100,000,
You mentioned this thing, maybe it'll be helpful for our audience. It was the accounting trick that all these investments that you are spending time and money on for your company, it should go under investment instead of expense.
Yeah.
Right? That will probably reduce your tax rate in some
It does.
ways.
It's a little complicated, but you got to differentiate profitability from cash flow. And you can be profitable, but bad in cash flow. Or you can have a lot of cash flow, but be bad in profitability. The example of a lot of cash flow, bad in profitability, is you get a lot of investment. $100,000 checks, $1 million checks, that's cash flow.
Yeah.
But it's not producing any profit against that cash flow, right? Likewise, what I was trying to build, and I did all cash-based accounting, and now my accountant is like, dude, you're making stuff now. You're making capital expenditures. You can't. But I was doing cash-based accounting because I was so focused on cash flow. Cash flow is the life and blood. Whether or not I could make payroll that month, that's all I cared about. And so I short-sightedly focused on cash flow. And
instead of
profitability. Instead of profitability. And it wasn't for tax reasons or anything like that. It's just, I just felt more comfortable running the business, like understanding what money went in that month and what money went out that month. But that is not the way to run a business. That's how you balance your bank account personally, almost.
Or if you have like a business like a restaurant or something that
there's not a big gap in between, like there's not net terms and things like that. You collect cash on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And in some cases that was us, but again, like a lot of the activities that I was doing was not working directly on the business or directly on our clients,
right?
Which would be cost of goods sold. It was actually me working on business development, product development, things like that, which is more a expense item that potentially could go on the balance sheet if you wanted to, what we call amortize that or accumulate that, right?
Yeah.
And then now if I look back, my P&L would not look so negative, but my cash flow still would have been the same.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha. So that might matter if you're trying to sell a company.
It tells a better story for the bank or the investor, but the sophisticated investor knows how to pick apart that and be like, dude, you're like hemorrhaging cash.
Right.
Well, where did all that cash go?
Right.
And that's the due diligence. You know, again, when you build a good, like a business that has the right systems in place, like a sophisticated investor should be able to apply their tools to your business so that they can dissect it and compare apples to apples, whether or not it's a good business.
Yeah.
Or not.
You just mentioned systems. I think it's a good topic to talk about for business who are in this stage, because you're most likely need to hire people now. And we also realize the importance of having a system instead of just like a boss telling a person to do something and the person writes it down, say, I did this, I did not do that.
Yeah, actually it's good. So project management has always been a tricky thing for us because I feel like we tried to define our sort of process for project management because our services were so custom.
Right.
So, and again, that's another, I keep talking about us not focusing and building a more repeatable service as opposed to a custom one. At the time, I realized like, we just don't know what we're doing. We're creating like way too much inefficiency from project management when the whole point of project management is to create efficiency, to make it easier for us to work. You shouldn't be working for the project management system. It should work for you.
Yeah.
So at the time, we could have signed up with a company that was very specific to the PM system we were using. They had a methodology and sort of a framework. It was like 30 or 40 grand to implement it for us at the time. And again, this is on our march from 100 to 500K.
Yeah.
I decided not to make that investment. And we've been fucking around with our project management system ever since then still. And I've kind of felt like if I just would have bit the bullet, and maybe it might have been the right time because we were so custom, but I feel like if I would have bit the bullet to implement that or hire that company to implement the project management, it would have exposed a lot of that a lot of the custom things that we were doing.
And they would might have think about this problem much, much earlier than before.
Yeah. And I say that now, sitting with the brain I have now and the scar tissue I have. But I think if I were to go and do that again, I would have made that investment. And I have a feeling I would have exposed that, dude, like you can't build a standardized project management system because nothing you guys do is standardized.
And you realize that you would think, oh shit, nothing I do is standardized and I can't scale and grow.
Or I would have made the same decision and moved forward and be like, just whatever, let's just do it the way it is right now,
Yeah.
So that's another example of like, hey, you got to make some bets. And like, again, as a first time like entrepreneur, and I say I've started companies before, but never scaled the way that we were scaling. It was an amateur mistake, and I think all of us, you look back on that and it's like, oh, it's so obvious now.
Yeah.
I never beat myself up about it, but it's funny when you look back on it. It's like, oh, it's so clear to me now.
Yeah.
I would have, like now we're making a lot of investments and, spending 10, 20 grand ahead of revenue doesn't feel so scary anymore. But back then it was, and fear is never a good reason to make or not make a decision.
Well, it sounds like a lot of times fear like stops entrepreneurs and people from wanting the best and getting the best, right? Because there's a fear like, what if you can't pay for it? What if it's too much? What if I don't need this yet? Like the list goes on, right?
I think that's most of them,
Yeah, and then you hear advice from more seasoned entrepreneurs like you need to hire the best if whatever you're doing is what you want to do, you need to hire the best in that industry.
Yep.
That will save you a lot of headache Because I've seen it so many times, often in life, where entrepreneurs just hire out of convenience, right?
That's what I did. Yeah.
Like whoever was
sure.
the cheapest, whoever was around and available. And I know that a lot of times you probably just need a pair of hands to do something, just get it done.
Yep.
But I think in those cases that never have a long lasting.
It's one of those things where if something, the trap with entrepreneurship and the time you always question whether or not you're making the right decision is if it's easy to get something fixed, question yourself, because it's never that easy. There's always something that's there you didn't account for. So it's like, oh, that's a good idea. We could do this. Sometimes you're actually convincing yourself I should do it.
Yeah.
In the case of some of our resources, I'm like, oh yeah, she can do it. And then I realized like, no, I was convincing myself that she could do it. And so is she.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think a lot of times we all can do it, but how well we do it, that makes it.
How long does it take to get there, and how much does it cost, and how many mistakes do you make along the way? We just hired some pretty senior people, and they're like, just do it this way.
Right.
And I'm not gonna question them.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, I hired you because you said do it this way. Let's go do it this way.
So I guess hire your best people. But I think on the flip side of the same discussion is that as an owner, entrepreneur, don't be a micromanager. Don't try to oversee what all your teams are doing if they're doing it exactly how you want it.
Fire faster than micromanage. Right. Get rid of them fast. Deal with all the crap that comes with firing someone. But if you feel like you're starting to have to micromanage, you're probably a sign you probably need to fire them ASAP.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice for entrepreneur in that stage. I think a lot of times we just feel bad, right? You work with this person, you know them, have met their family.
Yeah,
so I think it's like making that decision is extremely hard, right?
It's been pretty binary for me because in the end, it's like if I keep seeing money leaving my bank account but not getting value for it, I'm like, no, I don't want to keep seeing that, right?
Yeah. So I guess for entrepreneurs and business owners, like don't make that mistake of letting resource that isn't up to your standard be around for indefinitely, because
and there's no glory.
And you keep on trying to make justification. Oh, but that person's good at this, but I need that person to do this. Yeah. It's easy to justify those things.
To be a good manager or leader, you have to be okay with being not liked. And that's the nature of the game.
Yeah. Do you think you felt a lot of that during this period, or just more so now?
I think just being a leader in general, like everyone's always going to put a face to you, and you just have to realize like when someone's being authentic or genuine and when they're not. And I think at the time, people were very motivated and inspired by the things that I said, but I think we hired, again, people with a lot of potential and not skill sets.
Right.
Had done it before. Right. And that was a byproduct of my just poor mindset to hiring people. So I think, if I were to kind of maybe even wrap this episode, I think the characteristic of a 100K to 500K March in mine was like, okay, we've proven something, like now we've got more people coming to us. We need to make some investments. And that could be whether you're doing 500K to $1 million or $1 million to 5 or 10 to whatever, right?
It sounds like it's a more periodical thing that you have to do.
And so now you got to make some investments. And a lot of times our investments come down to people, right? Or you got to buy some crazy like $500,000 machine or whatever, right? And before you make that investment, right, I think there's a couple of things. One, do you have product market fit? And one of the most important things of product market fit is that there's focus. Impossible to get product market fit with no focus on a persona, a vertical, a niche, right? Not possible. The second is, if you have product market fit, what are the unit economics of what you're doing? Are you going to lose money every time you produce this service, or are the margins going to be so thin that you've got to do some crazy technology or something to reduce the cost to produce, right? And then I think third, when you're on this kind of like beginning of the march to scale, if you're gonna invest, you made the decision, I want to scale, we got product market fit, and you're ready to hire people, to your point, hire the best, hire elite level people. Don't skimp on them. and don't micromanage them, but have very clear things of what you want them to do. I want to be the number one person in this vertical. I want to dominate this in sales. I want to take every keyword in this pillar, and I want us to always show up on search for this result. If you hire an elite level SEO person, you got to have that goal for them.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so I think like looking back on this, for sure, like I got ahead of my skis, and most entrepreneurs, they get a little too confident when they get confident. And then they think they know what they're doing, when the reality of it is they knew what they were doing in this previous stage. They have no idea what they're doing in this stage. There's another death spiral, and I think that's from it's kind of like the 1 to 5 million. There's a very big death spiral that happens there with a lot of businesses. It's been proven time and time again. And that's actually one of the most dangerous periods. It's even more dangerous sometimes than being in the startup period, because now you have lines of credit, you have personal guarantees on your business,
You have a lot more to
you have
lose.
bankers, you have a lot more to lose, and you have maybe sometimes a false sense of confidence. So I feel like our business is, I'm working through this right now, and I've had enough mentors and people to warn me that I'm in this period right now, and we could either die or we could be better or we could stagnate, which to me is dying, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But I want to grow. But, that's required me to really change how I think about things and look back actually on some of these conversations now. So.
Yeah. And also I want to just add that Andrew's actually really excited about working right now, because he's in this phase of trying to figure things out. So it's not a bad place to be in, that you had to figure a new thing out, new next stage, whatever. I think it's rewarding, and it's also like exciting to think about, right?
Yeah. And you got to remember, like whenever there's something exciting, there's always something that's not exciting. So the part that's not exciting for me right now, even though, we're building new products, we're hiring really smart people, I'm learning. I'm learning from the people on our team. That's a really exciting place to be in. The part that's not so exciting is that I was going from like having 5-6 figures of cash flow coming in to like now cash is going out. All that cash that came in that we built that pile up with is now starting to go down a little bit, right? So,
but let me remind you, that is just a feeling.
It's
a mindset that you're trying to get over. So I think, it's normal that you feel that way. And I think the work right now is to not care about that, not worry about that. The power of manifestation.
Yes. So on that, manifesting, I guess.
Manifest.
A good rollout of all the things we're building. I think our next episode will kind of talk on that march to $1 million. Right. And I actually coming from an event where it was literally called a millionaire event, entrepreneurs who would cross that million threshold. I think there's some really interesting things. And I think I made a lot of the same mistakes that I made on that march to 500K. And it wasn't until after $1 million that I started to realize like, oh no, like I could have been at 5 by now if I didn't repeat those same mistakes again.
Oh, interesting. So you're kind of in the cliff of you could die or thrive.
I've known that for the last 2 or 3 years. There's been a build towards that. So I guess we'll leave it at that. And there's some other things for us to talk about on the next episode. But thanks for tuning in. I hope, these are interesting insights from like maybe a different perspective for all of you who are either starting or running a business. Be sure to subscribe, tune in. We're going to cut up all this into short form content for all of you, and tell a friend if you think there's an entrepreneur out there that might find this helpful. So thanks everyone.
And, I was going to say, if there's anybody out there who has a specific topic in their mind that they want to hear our perspective on, please leave a comment. So we'll read and, plan an episode for those things.
All right. Thanks everyone.
Bye.